Today, we talk about a witchy series that I stumbled upon randomly. And that series is the Threadneedle series by Cari Thomas. So I just read the first book in the series. If you've ever seen the movie The Craft, it has a vibe very similar to The Craft. And I like that because I loved the movie The Craft from back in the day. So we come to the story. There's this girl named Anna. She's 15, about to turn 16, and she lives with her aunt, who is like this hateful, vindictive, mean, bitter woman. Anna's parents had died. There was tragedy in her family with the way that her parents had died too, and you'll get into that if you do end up reading this book. And basically, her aunt wants her to be bound. She wants her powers bound. And she's always like, I do everything for you. If we don't have trust between us, this, that, and the other. But her aunt's lying to her about a whole bunch of stuff. And it's like, she starts to find this out as she gets older. And she's like, what the F? Because, in some weird way, she does still love her aunt because that's the only family she has, even though her aunt is like this sadistic, horrible human. But Anna hasn't really known anything else, so this is what she's working with. And as she starts to find out, like, all the stuff that her aunt's been doing to her and lying about, it leads her down quite an interesting road. And she does have this aunt, Celine, who is the complete opposite of her horrible Aunt Vivian, who she lives with. Her Aunt Vivian, who she lives with, is part of this group called the Binders, and they are basically like these people who don't think magic should be used and it should be hidden, and they're always like, these hunters are gonna come for everyone. They all seem to be these bitter old women. Yeah, they're a bunch of puckered sour lemon bunch, we'll call them. And so Celine, the aunt, is like the antithesis of these people, and she's like vivacious and loving and caring, and like seems like she is just this magical unicorn of a person. And like Anna's like, wow, like at least she's been exposed to that a little bit in her life. She doesn't get to see Celine very often, but when she does, Celine always would bring her presents. Like she'd get her these like gold heels that the shoes would change size as she gets older, so they would never not fit her and stuff like that. And then the last birthday that she has, she gives her this book of fairy tales, and sometimes there's more truth hidden in fairy tales than one would know. It was like a book that her mother had loved and whatnot. So she ends up going to school too with Celine's daughter Effie and this other boy Addis. And when she starts to talk to them, they start to go down a different road altogether, where Anna's like, oh my God, maybe I don't have to join the Binders. She doesn't really want to. Like, magic to her, she didn't think she could do magic, and then she starts being able to because Effie wants to form a coven with her and some of these other girls from school who are actually witches. They do end up coming together to do this, but you still have, like, looming over her shoulders this evil aunt who wants to bind her powers, and the story of what happens with that and what happens when they do start tapping into like some of their powers, and Anna starts to actually be able to access them. And this whole time she thought like she really didn't have much of any magic inside her, even though like she could remember when she first started to be able to do magic, and she could, and then it just kind of like went away or seemed very weak. But then she finds out another thing her aunt had lied to her about, and the reason for why this was. Like, I love this so far, so I'm very excited to get into the next book. So there's 4 in this series so far. 2 of them are novellas. The next one is called The Hedge Witch, which I just got, and then after that there's a big one called Shadow Stitch, and then there's another novella called The Burial Witch. So we'll have further thoughts in the future on them, but yeah, like I said, this first book very reminiscent of The Craft, especially with like the different characters. You have Effie, who is totally Firuza. She's got that whole like kind of power trip thing going on, and she's a rebel and gives no F's whatsoever. Anna is like trying to do what's right and be good, and she's like the rationale of the group. They butt heads, and you see I wouldn't call it the power struggle, like they kind of balance each other out. You have like the dark and the light and all of that just as they're going through school, because they're 16 and whatnot. There are some other girls that are kind of like these mean girl bullies that they end up casting a spell on, and the spell kind of spirals out of control, and it doesn't peter out like it's supposed to, and it grows in power, and it's like, okay, what do they do about that? And then Anna with trying to figure out like how to get out of having her aunt bind her, and should she confide in her new friends, because she's never really had friends before. Now she has this coven. what will happen if she reveals too much of herself? Can she trust these people? This, that, and the other. It was a really great read. If you like witchy, if you like magical, if you have seen the movie The Craft and you like that, definitely check out this book in the series. How this one turned out, which I thought it had a pretty good ending. How everything culminated and like the whirlwind of everything between the binders and what their machinations are and the crap that they were up to and all this, and like how stuff was happening too that was kind of calling attention to like witches and whatnot. But in this day and time, they're like, oh, well, people don't really believe in that. You know, they'll see magic and they'll just discount it to whatever, this, that, and the other. But, you know, you kind of see where the story goes. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Would recommend. If that sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.